My name is Catherine Hart. I'm 57 years old, and I want to tell you the story of how an ordinary family feud between a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law turned into a real nightmare that destroyed everything I loved and showed me what a monster I can become when I lose control of my fears. Olivia came into my life 2.5 years ago when my son Michael brought her home for Christmas. My husband Richard had died 6 months earlier, and I clung to Michael as the only thing I had left. "Mom, this is Olivia," Michael beamed, holding the hand of a fragile girl with huge blue eyes. "She's a psychologist. She helped me get through the hardest time, and I love her, Mom." Olivia offered me a trembling hand, and something inside me whispered a warning. She's afraid I'll see through her. "Mrs. Hart, I'm so sorry I never got to meet your husband. Michael told me so much about you, about what a strong woman you are. I watched her all evening, how she told the sad story of her parents' death, how she was left alone at 19, how she fought her way through life. Michael looked at her with so much admiration that I wanted to scream. He doesn't see she's manipulating his compassion, that she found a wealthy, lonely man desperate for comfort. But what worried me most was the way her gaze slid over our home, evaluating every object, and in that gaze I saw hunger, the hunger of someone who never had anything and now sees wealth. They married 8 months later. Olivia moved in with us and was the perfect daughter-in-law, so perfect it felt unnatural. But gradually, she began wedging herself between me and Michael, changing my home, my life. And 3 weeks ago, the strange accidents started. I had the most important meeting with investors, $15 million for the company. That morning, the documents vanished from my desk. I searched the house in panic. The meeting had to be rescheduled, and I saw the disappointment in the investors' eyes. The next day, the folder appeared in the trash, soaked in waste. How awful! Olivia grabbed my shoulders, her eyes full of concern. "I saw the folder on your desk yesterday. Maybe you moved it yourself and forgot." Michael looked at me in confusion. "Mom, maybe you were tired and mixed things up." A week later, at an important dinner, my signature soup was so oversalted no one could eat it. I was humiliated. My throat tightened with tears. "I feel so guilty." Olivia pressed her hands to her chest. I tasted the soup and it seemed bland, so I added some salt. "I wanted to help. I didn't know you already." And this morning, I came downstairs and saw shards on the floor. My favorite antique cup, Richard's gift, smashed to pieces. It slipped out of my hands. I'm so clumsy. Olivia looked at me with innocence, but I saw something else in her eyes, almost triumph. "Really?" My voice sounded like ice. "And you decided to stomp on it too?" "What? No!" Her eyes filled with tears instantly, and I couldn't tell if they were real or part of her act. I was gathering the pieces and stepped on one by accident. "God, how can you think that? I know how much that cup meant to you." Michael ran in. "Mom, what's going on?" "Your wife broke my cup," I said slowly, putting all my unsaid thoughts into the words. "It was an accident." Olivia turned to him, tears streaming down her cheeks, her hands reaching out for comfort. "Michael, I didn't mean to, I swear." He hugged her and looked at me with reproach. "Mom, it's just a cup. You don't understand." This is the third accident in 3 weeks. The documents, the soup, the cup. I felt a wave of helpless anger because I saw how he chose her, how he always chose her. "You don't see the pattern? Mom, maybe they really are coincidences?" His voice carried the exhaustion of someone tired of being the judge between mother and wife. I looked at them, at my son, who didn't believe me, and at his wife, clinging to him for protection, and I knew he would not believe me. "Forget it. Just clean up the shards." I walked out and leaned against the hallway wall, trying to steady my trembling hands. 3 accidents, 3 perfectly aimed blows. Olivia had declared war on me, a quiet war, where she looked like the victim and I looked like a paranoid tyrant mother-in-law. In my office, I took out the cheap prepaid phone I'd bought last week with cash and dialed the number. Mr. Chen. Catherine Hart. I need a private investigator. Surveillance 24/7, $3,000 a week. Cash. Agreed. I gave a description of Olivia, and when I hung up, I felt a strange relief mixed with disgust at myself. I had started spying on my son's wife, but I had no choice. In 5 days, it would be Olivia's birthday, a big celebration with guests, and by then I would have proof. Photos, facts, evidence to show Michael who she truly was. Back then, I didn't know those 5 days would be the beginning of the end. While hiring the detective, I thought about the day 3 months after the wedding, when we sat in Rebecca's office for the reading of Richard's will. Rebecca opened the folder and began reading in a formal tone. To my wife, Catherine, I leave the mansion, 50% of the company's shares and controlling interest. To my son, Michael, I leave the remaining 50% under the following condition. By the age of 35, he must have a legal heir. If the condition is not met, all shares transfer to Catherine, and she becomes the sole owner of the company, valued at $62 million. I saw Olivia inhale sharply, her fingers tightening around Michael's hand until the knuckles turned white, and something flashed in her eyes. Sharp fear? Calculation? Then vanished so quickly it left only unease. Dad wanted grandchildren, Michael said with a strained smile, looking at his wife with apologetic affection. He always said a family business should go to a family man. Yes, of course. I understand the logic. Olivia nodded with such calm it didn't seem natural for someone whose future had just been tied to produce a child on time. In the elevator, Michael hugged her. Don't worry, we have 3 years. We wanted kids anyway. Yes, I want kids, Michael. I want our family. She pressed against him, and her fingers clutched his shirt with something possessive, gripping, that made me uneasy. When she lifted her eyes and met mine in the elevator mirror, I didn't see the joy of a future mother. I saw something cold, predatory, and I understood she needed a child as a key to $31 million. 2 years have passed since that day. Olivia still hasn't gotten pregnant, and with every negative test, she has grown more desperate. And I still couldn't understand whether she was desperate because she couldn't give her husband a child or because time was running out for her chance at the inheritance. And today, as I walked up the stairs, I saw something through the slightly opened bathroom door that made my heart skip a beat. Olivia was holding a pregnancy test in her trembling hands. 2 pink lines. Positive. I froze, watching her face shift, shock, joy, then instantly fear, despair, and finally something dark and determined. She sat down on the edge of the tub, her lips moving silently, tears sliding down her cheeks. I couldn't tell if they were tears of happiness or grief. Then she abruptly stood up, wiped her face, looked at her reflection with hard resolve, and whispered words I could read on her lips. Everything changes now. She hid the test deep in the drawer under the sink, and I understood she wasn't going to tell Michael not yet. She was planning something, and this pregnancy was a weapon she would use when the moment was right. I went to my room, feeling a cold pit open inside me. Olivia was pregnant. Michael would get the inheritance, and I would lose control of the company Richard and I had built for 30 years. But the worst part was not knowing what she truly wanted or what she was willing to do to get it. My phone vibrated. The detective. Surveillance started. And for a moment I wondered what if I was wrong. What if I was turning into a paranoid old woman who sees conspiracies in shadows? But then I remembered her face in the mirror, her words, "Everything changes now," and the cold only tightened. In 5 days, at her birthday party, I would know the truth. On the 3rd day, the detective's report arrived a sealed envelope with photos. I opened it in my office, feeling a twisted mix of triumph and painful disappointment, because seeing proof is always more painful than merely suspecting. The first photo, Olivia at a subway station with a man in a dark coat standing close. Too close. She hands him a white envelope clearly stuffed with cash. The second, in a pharmacy, holding a package and hiding the label with her hand, guilt written across her face. The third, the most disturbing. 2 a.m, she's in her nightgown in front of Richard's open safe, rummaging through documents with such tension, it's clear she's searching for something specific. I stared at the photographs, trying to find definite proof, but finding only questions. The man could be a therapist, a friend she was helping financially, or a lover, an accomplice. The pills could be antidepressants, prenatal vitamins, or something dangerous. The safe she could have been searching for will documents or simply papers Michael asked for. So I decided to act. If Olivia played a war of small jabs, I would answer in kind, only subtler, sharper. On Friday, I arranged a family dinner and invited Elizabeth Crawford, Michael's ex. Beautiful, successful, still carrying quiet feelings for him. Elizabeth hasn't seen you in ages, dear. It would be rude not to reconnect with an old friend, I said innocently, and I watched Olivia's eye twitch, her shoulders tighten. During dinner, I watched Elizabeth laugh at Michael's jokes, touch his hand, recall their past, remember Cape Cod, the sailboat, and I watched Olivia sit across from them, fists clenched so hard her knuckles went white, forcing a tight smile, her comments falling flat. The next day, I forgot to pass on a message from Olivia's friend about a planned meetup. She arrived an hour late and came back with tear-reddened eyes. "Catherine, did you see a note from Sarah?" Her voice shook. "A note? What note, dear?" "I didn't see anything," I answered, with gentle confusion, watching the suspicion flicker in her eyes, the suspicion she couldn't voice. "And on Sunday, I gave her a dress for the charity gala. Expensive, lovely, wrapped in a box with a ribbon. I saw it and thought of you immediately. It will look wonderful on you." Olivia opened the box with delight, then froze. The dress was 2 sizes too large, hanging shapelessly. And in her eyes, I saw the realization, the humiliation. At dinner that evening, she lifted her gaze at me, sharp and steady. "Catherine, don't you find it strange how much seems to happen to me? The documents, the soup, the cup, the missed messages, the wrong size dress. Do you really think all of this is an accident?" I slowly set down my silverware, dabbed my lips with a napkin, hiding my emotions behind polite confusion. "What do you mean, dear? I don't understand these accusations at a family dinner. Mom, Ash, please." Michael tried to step in with the weary plea of someone tired of being the referee. "No, Michael, let your mother answer." Olivia didn't look away. "Catherine, why do you hate me? What have I done except love your son?" I stood, feeling heat boil inside me from the inability to say everything I wanted. "I'm going to rest. I have a headache from these absurd accusations." That night, around 2 a.m, I heard sounds in the kitchen. I went down quietly and saw Olivia at the counter. In front of her was a glass with a cloudy liquid. She was pouring something from a bottle, stirring it with a trembling hand. "What are you doing?" My voice sliced the silence. Olivia jumped, turning toward me with naked fear. I can't sleep. I'm making something to calm down. Herbal tea with valerian." She tried to hide the glass, but I was already approaching, and she backed up until her spine hit the table. "And what's in that bottle?" I held out my hand. After a moment of hesitation, she gave it to me. The label read, "Melatonin 5 milligrams." Just melatonin, nothing dangerous. But I wouldn't believe in her innocence. "Why do you hate me, Catherine?" Her voice cracked, eyes filling with tears. "No matter what I do, you look at me like I'm the enemy. I love Michael. I want to be part of this family. But you won't give me a single chance." I watched her trembling lips, her tears, the mask of suffering. Inside me, a tiny doubt flickered against a larger wave of cold certainty she was lying. Always lying. I don't know what you're talking about, Olivia, but I know who you are. And soon Michael will know too. I left her crying at the table. As I climbed the stairs, I heard her whisper something too soft to make out, but filled with hopeless resolve. 2 days left until her birthday. The next morning, I met with Rebecca in a small cafe on Charles Street, far from familiar eyes. "Rebecca, I need to change my will," I said quietly, leaning across the table. "If anything happens to me, everything goes to the Richard Hart Foundation, not to Michael, not while he's married to her." "Catherine, are you sure?" Rebecca set her hand over mine with the worried touch of a true friend watching you self-destruct. "He's your only son. You want to cut him off because of suspicions. These aren't suspicions. They're facts." I pulled my hand away. Irritated, even she didn't believe me. "I have photos. Proof Olivia is planning something." "All right. I'll draft the documents," Rebecca sighed, shaking her head. "But think again, Catherine. Michael won't forgive this." That evening, returning home, I heard voices from Michael and Olivia's bedroom, loud, upset. I stopped in the hallway, listening, my heartbeat quickening. "Ash, what is this?" "Why didn't you tell me?" Michael's voice was full of pain. "Zoloft? You're taking antidepressants? For how long?" "Michael, I didn't want to burden you," Olivia sobbed. 6 months ago, I fell into a terrible depression. I couldn't see a reason to live, and I saved up pills, wrote a goodbye letter. I was going to... God, Ash, no. I heard him pull her into his arms, horror in his voice. "Why didn't you tell me? I was supposed to help you, protect you." "Your mother keeps saying I'm not worthy of you, that I'll ruin your life, that I only came for the money," Olivia sobbed, and every word struck me like a blow. I started to believe she was right, that it would be better if I were gone, so you could find someone worthy, someone your mother would approve of. I stood by the door, leaning against the wall, and for the first time I felt something unexpected. A jab of doubt, sharp enough to pierce all my certainty. What if I was wrong? What if Olivia really did just love my son and was suffering because of my cruelty? But then I heard Olivia lower her voice, Michael gasp with joy, and curiosity won. I moved closer to the door. "Michael, there's something else." A brighter note entered Olivia's voice. "I'm pregnant." 6 weeks. I wanted to tell you earlier, but I was afraid of disappointing you. "Pregnant? That's wonderful, the best news of my life." Michael laughed and cried at the same time. Something inside me shattered for good. She was pregnant. Michael would get the inheritance, $31 million. I would lose control of the company, and Olivia would win. But the worst part was seeing how happy they were, and realizing that even if I exposed her, he would choose her, because she was carrying his child. I stepped back from the door on shaking legs and bumped into someone. Grandma Dorothy stood behind me, leaning on her cane, looking with those sharp eyes that saw and understood far too much. "Eavesdropping isn't nice, Catherine, even in your own home," she said gently, without judgment. But with such sadness, it made me want to cry. "Mother, you don't understand, I began, but Dorothy raised a hand to stop me. "I've watched people for many years, Catherine, and I see what you can't in your obsession." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Are you sure you're fighting the right person? Are you sure the enemy is where you think?" "What are you talking about?" I felt a chill spread inside at this hint of something I didn't understand. But Dorothy only shook her head sadly and walked away, tapping her cane, leaving me with a question burning from within. What did she mean? There was one day left before Olivia's birthday. The next morning, the day before her birthday, I couldn't wait any longer. The weight of suspicion was eating me alive, turning me into someone I didn't recognize. I found Olivia in the living room hanging garlands for the party, and the sight of those innocent decorations only hardened my resolve. "Olivia, I need to talk to you," I said, holding a folder of photographs, and watched her freeze on the step stool, her fingers on the garland going white. I opened the folder, laying the photos on the table one by one, like cards in a poker game where the stakes were her entire life in this house. "Explain this. Who is this man? What's in the envelope?" "A detective watched you for 3 weeks, and you meet him every Wednesday." Olivia looked at the photos, and her face shifted. Shock, fear, then anger she no longer hid. "You spied on me? Hired a detective?" "Answer the question," I said, putting down the next photo. "The pharmacy. What were you buying? What are you hiding from Michael?" "That's my private business." "You have no right." She swallowed, and I could see her mind racing for explanations. "I have every right to protect my son." I threw down the last photo. "At the safe at night. And this? Why are you rummaging through my late husband's documents, looking for information about the money, the will? You're sick." Olivia grabbed the pictures and crushed them in her hands, rage blazing across her face. "You're a paranoid, cruel woman who can't accept that your son chose someone else. Yes, I meet with someone. He's my therapist, Dr. Morris. I pay cash because I don't want you controlling even that. Yes, I bought antidepressants because living with you drove me to a suicide attempt. And I was looking in the safe for documents Michael asked me to find for accounting." Michael burst in, drawn by the shouting, his face twisted with alarm. "What's going on here?" "Mom, why are you yelling?" "Ask your wife what she's hiding." I pointed at the photos. "Ask about that man, the pharmacy, the late night rummaging through our papers." Michael looked at the photos, then at me, and there was so much disappointment in his eyes that my chest tightened. "Mom, you spied on my wife?" "I'm protecting you, Michael." My voice trembled. Even to me, the words sounded unconvincing. "Ash already explained everything yesterday, about the therapist, the depression, the pills," he said, holding a sobbing Olivia. "And I really did ask her to find those documents." "Mom, you've gone too far." I stood before them, feeling the ground give way as all my evidence dissolved into smoke. Olivia raised her tear-reddened eyes, and in them was a triumph she no longer hid. "Tomorrow is my birthday, Catherine. There will be guests, family, friends, and I don't want you ruining the party with your sick suspicions." I left, hearing Michael whisper words of comfort to her, not to me, and I knew I had lost this round. That evening, I heard Olivia talking on the phone in the garden. I crept to the window and caught fragments. "She knows too much. Don't know how much longer I can take. Tomorrow we have to follow the plan. Yes, I understand. It'll be fine." She was planning something for tomorrow. I was sure of it. After the confrontation, I locked myself in my study, feeling rage and despair tear me apart, because Michael hadn't believed me. He'd chosen her tears and her explanations, which sounded so plausible that even I wavered for a moment. But I had a trump card no one knew about: hidden cameras installed throughout the house a month ago, when I decided I had to protect myself at any cost and catch Olivia in the act. I opened my laptop, entered the surveillance system password, and began reviewing the past week's footage, fast-forwarding and pausing at moments when Olivia was alone. And with each clip, my certainty grew that I wasn't wrong. And then, on a recording from 3 weeks ago at 2 a.m, I saw something that sent my heart pounding so hard I could feel my pulse in my temples. Olivia, in a nightgown, slipped quietly into my bedroom while I slept, opened the medicine cabinet, took out her phone, and began methodically photographing the labels of all my medications. Heart pills, blood pressure tablets, sleeping aids, antidepressants, every box, every instruction leaflet. My hands shook so badly I had to lay them on the desk, and one thought kept circling my head. Why did she need this information? Why photograph my medications, study dosages and interactions, unless you plan to use it against me? Maybe she was looking for a way to poison me so it looked like a natural death, an overdose, or a dangerous combination of drugs, Or did she just want to know about my health so she could show Michael his mother was aging, ill, losing her grip? I didn't know for sure, and that uncertainty was worse than any certainty. It fed my paranoia, made me see danger in everything she did. I copied the footage to a flash drive and sat with my head in my hands, laying out a plan for tomorrow. 30 people would gather, friends, relatives, our entire social circle. Tomorrow I would set a trap for Olivia, provoke her into a mistake that would expose her in front of everyone, and Michael would finally see who she was. I had a plan, rehearsed in my head 100 times, and it required the cold resolve to act without hesitation, without doubt. Late that evening, I went downstairs for some water and found Grandma Dorothy in the living room. She sat with a book but was staring out the window with a pensive look that spoke of worry. "Can't sleep, Mom?" I sat down across from her. "Tomorrow's a big day." Dorothy closed the book and fixed me with those sharp eyes that carried the wisdom of years. "Olivia's birthday. But you don't look like someone who's planning to celebrate, Catherine. I'm tired of pretending, of games, of having to smile when all I want is to scream." I ran a hand over my face, feeling the weight of exhaustion. "Have you considered, Catherine, that you might be fighting the wrong person?" Dorothy leaned forward with such seriousness that I tensed, that the real enemy isn't Olivia, but your own fear of losing control, the fear of being alone, the fear that Michael doesn't need you anymore. "You don't understand. I have evidence, recordings," I began heatedly, but Dorothy raised a hand. "You have recordings of a young woman photographing her mother-in-law's medicine, possibly because she's worried about her health." She paused to let the words land. "You have photos of sessions with a psychotherapist who's helping her with depression. You have shots of her buying antidepressants because she was on the brink of suicide. Catherine, what if all of that isn't proof of her guilt, but proof of yours?" I sat there numb, feeling her words slip past the armor of certainty, planting doubts I didn't want to allow, and somewhere deep down I understood. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had become the monster I saw in Olivia. "Whatever you're planning for tomorrow, think twice." Dorothy stood leaning on her cane and laid a hand on my shoulder with such tenderness I felt like a little girl again. "Because what you do tomorrow could destroy not only Olivia's life, but yours, Michael's, and whatever's left of our family." She left me alone in the dim living room, and I sat there a long time, staring out at the dark garden where tomorrow guests would laugh, unaware they'd witness the moment the Hart family fell apart. But it was too late to back down. I'd gone too far. Tomorrow I would learn the truth. Olivia's birthday began with counterfeit cheer, everyone pretending yesterday's scandal hadn't happened, that we were still a family and not enemies under one roof. Guests arrived around 230 people in expensive outfits, with gifts and smiles, unaware they were about to witness the final act of our war. I stood at the window with a glass of champagne I wouldn't drink and watched Olivia in a pale blue dress, flitting among the guests, smiling, accepting congratulations. No one would have thought that this fragile girl was capable of anything dark, but I knew. I'd seen the truth. And today I would prove it to everyone. Around 4, I noticed Olivia return several times to the drinks table, where cups stood with name cards. She kept glancing over her shoulder to check if anyone was watching, and her movements were so careful, my heart began to pound with foreboding. Then I saw it, the quick, almost invisible motion as she took a small bottle from her purse, opened it, and sprinkled something into the cup with my name on it. She stirred with a spoon and stepped away, pretending to straighten the place settings. I'd caught her. Finally, red-handed. A wave of triumph exploded inside me, laced with a strange disappointment, because deep down, I'd still hoped to be wrong. I walked slowly toward the table, feeling the conversations around me grow muffled, as if the only thing that existed was that cup with my name. I stopped at the table and picked up the cup. In that moment, I saw Olivia blanch, her eyes widen in horror. She took a step forward as if to snatch the cup, then froze. "Michael, darling, call everyone over, please," I said so coldly several guests flinched. "I want to congratulate the birthday girl, and I want everyone to hear it." Michael came over, puzzled, and the guests formed a semicircle around us, the air thick with tense expectation. "Dear Olivia, happy birthday." I raised the cup, and the guests lifted their glasses, assuming it was a toast. 2.5 years ago, you came into our family, and they've been very interesting years, full of revelations. Olivia stood opposite me, her face a mask of politeness, but I saw the panic in her eyes and the tremor in the hands she clenched to keep from shaking. "I saw you add something to this cup a few minutes ago." I set the cup back down without taking a sip. "I saw you take a bottle from your purse and pour it in." Dead silence fell. Michael stepped forward, horror on his face. "Mom, what are you saying? What are you talking about?" "I'm saying your wife put something in my coffee." I didn't take my eyes off Olivia. "And I want to know what. So here's my suggestion. Why don't you drink this coffee yourself, Olivia? If there's nothing dangerous in it, you won't refuse, will you?" "Catherine, I don't understand what you mean." Olivia backed away, her voice trembling so much the words barely held together. "I didn't add anything. I was just straightening the cups. You must have imagined it." I didn't imagine it. I held the cup out to her, and the guests froze, watching taut as wire. "Drink it. Prove to me and to everyone that I'm a paranoid old woman. Drink the coffee, Olivia." "Mom, stop it. You're humiliating us." Michael tried to take my hand, but I pulled away. "Drink," I repeated, steel in my voice, leaving no room for argument. Olivia looked at the cup, then at me, then at Michael, a storm of emotions crossing her face: fear, despair, fury, and something like hopeless resolve. "All right." She suddenly straightened, wiped away her tears, and took the cup with shaking fingers. "All right, Catherine. I'll drink it. I'll prove to you that you're wrong." Olivia lifted the cup to her lips. I saw her hand tremble, a tear slide down her cheek, and for a second I wanted to stop her. But I didn't, certain that at the last moment she would refuse, confess, and everyone would see her true face. But she didn't refuse. She took a first sip, then a second, then drained the coffee to the dregs, never taking her eyes off me. Eyes full of defiance and despair. When she set the empty cup on the table, the clink of porcelain sounded like a sentence. "Satisfied, Catherine?" Her voice was quiet, but it carried such pain that several guests turned away. I stood there feeling my triumph drain into cold bewilderment. She had drunk it, simply taken it and drunk it, and now I didn't know what that meant. The next 10 minutes passed in a surreal haze. The guests tried to resume the merriment, but conversations were strained. Eyes flicked toward me and Olivia. I watched her, and she seemed fine, that I had been wrong, that I'd staged a disgraceful scene. But then, when they brought out the cake and everyone began to sing "Happy Birthday," Olivia's face changed. She went pale and clutched her stomach. In her eyes flashed a terror, a physical agony so stark it was obvious that something was going very, very wrong. "Excuse me," she whispered, pressing a hand to her mouth, and bolted for the door. The bathroom door slammed, and the sounds from inside were so wrenching that several women gasped. Michael ran after her, and I after Michael. He pounded on the door, shouting, "Ash, open up! What's happening to you?" When the door finally opened, I saw Olivia on the floor, pale as death, shaking all over, and in her eyes was such silent reproach that I stepped back, feeling cold spread through me as the realization of what I had done hit. "Call an ambulance!" Michael fumbled with his phone, his hands trembling so badly he could barely dial. "Hurry, my wife is sick. She's pregnant. She needs help." Pregnant. The word hit like a blow, and the guests turned toward me with looks of disgust and condemnation, because they all understood that I had forced a pregnant woman to drink something dangerous. The ambulance arrived after 12 endless minutes. Olivia was taken away. Michael went with her, the guests left in silence, avoiding my eyes, and I was left standing alone among the birthday garlands and the untouched cake. At the hospital, the doctor told me in a flat voice lined with disdain, there was a laxative in the coffee. Over the counter. 3 times the normal dose. Not lethal, nah, for a woman who isn't pregnant. A laxative. Not poison, just a laxative meant to humiliate me in front of the guests. A petty, spiteful revenge, not a murder attempt. The baby? I asked, barely moving my lips. Miscarriage, the doctor said curtly. The laxative didn't cause it, but the stress, the psychological shock. Mrs. Hart lost the baby. I had killed my unborn grandchild, not with poison, but with my paranoia, my cruelty, my obsession. Michael stepped out of the room, and when he looked at me, there was only emptiness in his eyes, a terrifying emptiness that told me I had lost my son forever. She wants to talk to you, he said distantly, as if speaking to a stranger. I entered the room. Olivia lay on white sheets, small, broken, but her eyes burned with a feverish fire. Yes, I did put a laxative in your coffee, Catherine. She spoke first, without remorse, only exhaustion. I wanted you to cramp up in front of the guests, to feel at least a fraction of the humiliation I felt every day in your house. It was stupid, petty revenge, but I couldn't take it anymore. And a month ago? I asked, gripping the back of a chair. No, that was an allergy, like the doctors said. I wasn't trying to poison you. Never. Tears slid down her cheeks. I photographed your pills so I'd be ready to help you if anything ever happened. The man you saw is my therapist. The pills were antidepressants I hide out of shame. The safe... I was looking for documents Michael asked me to find. Everything had an innocent explanation, Catherine. Everything except that last foolish, desperate act. Her hand moved to her flat stomach, where yesterday a new life had existed. I wanted that baby. Not for money, not for the inheritance. I wanted a family. And now it's gone. I stood there with tears streaming down my face, with no excuse left for what I had done. I'm leaving Michael. Olivia looked at me. Not because of the baby, because of you. I can't live in a house where I'm hated. Michael always chose you. She turned her face to the wall, and I understood that I couldn't repair what I had destroyed. 3 weeks passed. Olivia filed for divorce. Michael moved out. He visits me out of duty, but I see in his eyes that he cannot forgive. I sit in the empty mansion surrounded by a company worth $62 million, the company I fought so desperately to keep, and I understand that none of it means anything without the people I've lost. Grandma Dorothy was right. I was fighting the wrong person. The real enemy was my paranoia, my fear, my inability to let go of control. The real poison was never in the cup. The real poison was the hatred in my heart that I let consume everything I held dear. And now I sit here alone and ask myself, was it worth it? Number. It wasn't.